Hello to all of you tuning in for the latest instalment of Travel Retail Question Time, a unique and open forum kindly sponsored by Nestlé International Travel Retail, which allows TRBusiness readers and you as the viewer to pose your questions to an influential member of the duty-free and travel retail sector. Now, as a reminder of the format, we ask readers to submit their questions. The top 10 are shortlisted, voted on again, and the leading 5 are put to our eminent interviewee, who this edition, I'm pleased to announce, is Julie Lassaigne. She's the Secretary General of the European Travel Retail Confederation, ETRC. Julie, lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, Luke, for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to having this exchange with you. Fantastic.
Now, as a reminder to all our viewers, the questions that are being asked of Julie today are chosen by the readers and viewers. TRBusiness has no input on their selection. So to the first question, Julie. Globally, we are facing a wave of consumer and shopper activism against plastic pollution. In travel retail, we give away billions of single-use plastic bags and sell billions of plastic water bottles every year. What do you think the travel retail industry can do to effectively respond to the demand for action from travellers and shoppers to do something about this growing issue, a call to action, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's very fair to say that across the globe and in Europe in particular, we see environmental issues being at the core of consumers but also legislators' concerns. And I think very soon it's not about what the industry can do to make a difference, but what the industry shall do and will have to do in order to meet the demands from the regulators. We've seen in Europe that a few months ago, a European directive which has been now adopted, which will ban a number of single-use plastics products from 2021. For instance, you will not have any more plastic straws, cotton buds, which will be able to be placed on the market in Europe. That directive also sets very specific target for plastic bottles, with minimum requirements for recycled content that will have to be part of the composition of plastic bottles. So definitely things are moving, but I don't think our retailers and our brands have actually waited for legislation to act on these trends. As far as I can say from our retailers and from our members, they've been already fighting the change on plastic bags for a number of years. Many of them are already supplying reusable bags or simply advising their staff to ask shoppers if they need a plastic bag at all. I think from the supplier sides, a lot of them are already working for a number of years on alternatives to replace plastic packaging. So definitely things are moving. However, I would say things are a bit different in our supply chain. As you know, the travel retail and duty-free industry operates in a very controlled and secure environment. And it's also our duty to remind policymakers of that. In the issue of STEBs in particular, security temporary evident bags, which is an international standard which requires liquids, aerosols and gels, both in duty-free, to be placed in STEBs for transfer travellers. At the moment, there is no alternative to plastic STEBs. So we also have to tell policymakers that we want to change, but we need to have a proportionate response when it comes to environmental challenges.
Very apt message, Julie, and indeed one that a lot of retailers and suppliers are taking on board, particularly in their efforts to combat this environmental blight. I would just say at this point that Travel Retail Business and Duty Free Innovation has partnered recently to introduce a series of important initiatives, the Travel Retail Sustainability Forum and Plastic Pledge. We'd urge all of you associated and keen to have a marked impact on changing your footprints to back the campaign, to join the conversation via Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, and sign up to the Plastic Pledge, more details of which are available on trbusiness.com. Julie, I will move to the next question now. Thank you. So, the current talk in the UK is all about Boris Johnson and what he will do about Brexit, with a no-deal scenario looking increasingly likely. How do you think that will impact European travel retail, if at all?
It will impact travel retail, that's for sure. I would say, as you know, Brexit has implications well beyond the travel retail and duty-free industry. But it's something that definitely is going to change the picture and the business in which we operate. As you know, uncertainty is bad for business. So I would say that's at the moment what we've been seeing with this very blurred political picture in the UK. Industry, companies, businesses don't know what will happen, what they will have to do to secure their business for the coming month. And we've seen that Boris Johnson has been very public about the possibility of leaving the EU with no deal on the 31st of October. So I think that's a scenario that has to be taken very seriously. We have been advising our members to prepare for that scenario already for several months. Obviously, we are concerned about a number of disruptions to the business and to the supply chain in particular. With the UK leaving the EU, it means that goods will not be able to move freely as part of the single market anymore. So we could expect severe disruptions to the supply chains, goods being blocked at the borders, at custom controls, and so on. So obviously, there's a number of concerns that we have with the prospect of a no deal. If it will happen, I think nobody can tell at the moment. There are a number of scenarios that are still on the table. The UK could also call for general elections, in which case would have new governments by the end of the year. There's a number of scenarios that can still happen. When it comes to duty free, in particular, we've had one very clear demand since the beginning of the Brexit process. That demand is that EU legislation should apply when the UK leaves the EU and becomes a third country, so that duty-free sales return for travellers from the EU to the UK, and that's a scenario that has been confirmed many times by the European Commission in their guidance in the case of a no-deal scenario. For that scenario to happen in the UK, the United Kingdom must amend their own legislation to allow for travellers from the UK to the EU to enjoy duty and tax-free sales. And our member, ETRC, has been extremely busy talking to the authorities in the UK to make sure that this policy changes are in place on the day that the UK leaves the EU. That's the same for us. We are a few weeks, I would say, away from the 31st of October 2019. As ETRC, we have a series of meetings planned in Brussels in September to ensure that the position of the European Union is that the EU legislation applies, and that's the scenario we've been looking forward to.
And Julie, what do you see as the future roadmap of how things might play out should those, depending on how those negotiations, discussions go, if we are headed towards a hard Brexit scenario that at this point in time is looking likely? There is a agreement on the EU side. We need it on the UK side. How do you see things playing out then with the 31st of October looming? A lot of our viewers will be seeking reassurance. What would you say to that?
I think that's what we've been telling to our members is be ready for all scenarios possible, which is not the best advice because you're planning for a multitude of scenarios. But at the moment, it's totally unclear, and I think nobody can say what will actually happen in the frame of Brexit. We'll have some level of certainty, I will say, once the UK Parliament comes back from holidays. We'll see if Labour and Jeremy Corbyn are ready to call for no confidence votes into the government, which could open the door probably to a new referendum, general elections, maybe a suspension of Article 50. Which would then push probably again the date for no-deal Brexit. So I think we'll have some more clarity, I would say, in the first weeks of September. But at the moment, our message is be ready for a potential return of duty and tax-free sales as of the 1st of November 2019, which potentially will be one of the only silver lining of Brexit, if I could put it this way.
Indeed, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and as we know, anything between now and 31st of October is very much up for grabs, as it were, politically. And indeed, if there is a deal, that's a completely different scenario. And then the question's asked, well, for duty-free, what will the next 12 months or so look like in terms of a potential restoration? I'm sure that's questions that people will also be asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there is a deal which is agreed between the UK and the EU, that will open the door for a transition period. Under the previous agreement, the transition period was for about 20 months. So we could imagine a similar scenario that will happen again, but it's not certain at the moment. The date for the transition period to finish is the end of 2020, so that's still the date that is on the table. If that could be extended as part of a new arrangements, that's again a discussion that needs to happen between the UK and the EU.
Okay,
and if there is a transition period, that means a status quo for duty-free. It means that duty-free and travel retail, duty-free sales would come back in 2021. The scenario of a deal.
Of deal in line with the existing agreements that will be made. Okay, fantastic. Julie, next question, and it is an open-ended one for sure. Could no doubt form the basis of an entire interview itself. If you could look into a crystal ball, where would you see the industry's major challenges coming from in, say, the next decade?
Yeah, I think if I had a crystal ball, I'd be really rich, that's for sure. But I think there are a number of challenges, of trends that we see that will definitely impact our industry for the coming 5 or 10 years. We discussed the environmental issues already. Sustainability is a topic for me, which for me is here to stay. We hear about the shame of flying in the Nordic countries in Europe. The cruise industry is also under scrutiny in other parts of Europe. So I think definitely it's not only the travel retail industry which will have to change and adapt, but the tourism industry as a whole. And I think that's also a wake-up call for our industry, because for many years we've seen that that growth of travel retail and duty-free sales have actually been relying on the growth of air traffic and of passengers. However, if that passenger growth is being put in jeopardy, I think that's definitely, a question and a situation that retailers and suppliers will have to address. What we've seen when we've been publishing the ETRC index for a number of years now, which identify trends in duty-free. What we can see over the past years is that penetration rate is relatively flat. Spend per passenger in Europe actually tends to decrease, and I think we have to think differently about how we can capture and how we can convince travelers to actually come and shop.
Yeah, very, very apt. And I'd say to that you talk about the different channels and how we can't rely on traffic growth as a boost for duty-free sales. It's no longer a given. I think we're seeing in particularly the ferry and cruise channel, huge growth year on year. In fact, I believe last year, total passenger growth outstripped that of total tourist arrivals. So I think that is pertinent in itself, and indeed many channels will be looking to uprate their growth, and indeed, as you say, it's not all about relying on those duty-free sales, passenger growth to spike duty-free sales. Something really needs to be done in different channels. Yeah,
absolutely, and I think we're in a relatively comfortable position, having a captive audience, as we say, and this picture has changed as well with the growth of e-commerce. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get shoppers to lift, to raise their head, detach from their phones and actually enjoy the experience, enter the shop, and yeah, I think that's one of the most pressing challenge that we'll have to address. How we can talk to travelers even before they enter our shops, And it's actually a reflection that we are starting at ETRC now. How will the future of travel retail look like? How can we sustain, especially in Europe, where we are under increasingly regulatory pressure as well? How can we make sure that we present the best customer experience, and that we really sustain the future of our industry?
Mm-hmm. Moving to our next question, and one I know that you are very close to, regarding declarations on packaging. Every EU country requires their own language on the packaging. For manufacturers, this creates many difficulties and limits the potential for certain products. I know that there were some ideas about using an app/barcode to limit the languages on the packaging to a minimum. Can you provide an update on this? Of course, referring to the European Food Information to Consumer regulations that mandates ingredient and nutritional information, often in multiple languages on product packaging. A trend that, or threat rather, that affects not only the likes of confectionery, but increasingly now a broad number of duty-free and travel retail categories. And I'm sure many of our viewers will be interested to hear what the ETRC and how the industry is responding to that potential threat. ETRC has been working hard, obviously, on an off-label solution to tackle some of those challenges. So it's exciting times at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. As you know, for many years, we've been working on the issue of labeling and packaging, and we've seen this spreading across all categories in travel retail. It's true that, according to legislation, information has to be provided in a language easily understood by the consumer, but often member states interpret that requirement as being the local language. What we say is that in travel retail, that's not relevant. We want to talk to the international customer while maintaining as well the integrity of the packaging, while enabling the supply chain as well. And if we have that strict requirement that national legislation applies, then we could see definitely a threat to travel retail exclusives in particular. So that has been a core topic for us for many years already. So in response to that, as you mentioned, we have been working on developing a technology solution whereby passengers can access product information by scanning a barcode on the product, either using their own smartphone or in-store scanners. That solution we've been working on we've been presenting it to the European Commission, and recently we've had a very encouraging response from the Commission. They want us to continue that project, but more importantly, they want us to launch that solution in a live environment. They want us to collect feedback from consumer acceptance who would be using the solution in shops across Europe in travel retail. So that's very much now what we want to do with our members, and we're now working on a one year phase where, together with a limited number of suppliers in the food, alcohol, and cosmetics categories, we would be launching the platform, a fully functional platform in several languages, where consumer could access information about a limited number of SKUs. And we see that 1 year phase as crucial to ensure that we get the acceptance from the regulators that digital labeling is a way forward and is a viable alternative to on-pack labeling in travel retail. And I would say, as you know, we've been working on this for many years. You know, that's a topic really true to my heart. And I'm pleased to say that I think efforts are finally about to pay off. We've seen in recent months a number of green lights, or at least positive signals towards digital labeling. If I can mention a few of the categories, the European Commission has opened the door to digital labeling in cosmetics, because the European Commission is considering increasing the list of fragrance allergens on cosmetic products. And they are looking into the possibility to do so by allowing digital labeling. And we should know by the end of the year if that's the official position of the Commission. And ETRC was actually consulted as part of a selected group of associations to give our opinion on that subject.
Yeah, I was going to just cut in there and say, obviously, recognition in our industry from the EU on this is obviously a great move. But in real terms, on the ground, the traveller's reaction to being able to access product information off label, many people will probably be wanting to know how that has played out. Is the reception been good in the tests that you've undertaken so far?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a small test at Hamburg Airport last year, and the reception from travelers has been great because currently the information in the packaging is not available in all languages, of course. It's sometimes really difficult to identify and to read, especially for international travelers, which are not used to looking for information on a Europeanized product. So the feedback we had was tremendous, which is why we decided to continue the project. So we're working now on launching the platform on a bigger scale, because we want to make sure that we get enough acceptance from the consumers. But acceptance definitely have been there, and our suppliers are really on board with the project.
Seems like the traction's been very positive, and we'll be no doubt following that closely.
Absolutely, and it's the same at regulators level. We had discussion taking place at UN level. An international body called Codex Alimentarius, which is responsible for setting international standards for food and alcohol labeling, has actually discussed the topic of digital labeling and of the pack information back in May. And the ETRC pilot project was actually referenced as one of 4 initiatives currently going on at international level. So I think for us that was also a great recognition to have our name, our project referenced in an official document of the UN, saying that clearly we're doing something which goes in the right direction to the benefits of our industry, but also of our international travellers.
Very good, very good. And Julie, I'm going to ask you the last question, the 5th question. What are the most pressing concerns for the ETRC right now? Echoing the 3rd question, so if you could just give us maybe a bit of a different angle on what you feel right now are those challenges, not 10 years in front.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, very pragmatically, the coming weeks, the coming month will be used to make new friends in the European Parliament and in the European Commission, because as you know, we had European elections back in May with 60% of new members coming into the Parliament. There will be a new European Commission team in place in November, and clearly we need to go knock on doors, explain what the importance of duty-free and travel retail, what we are, but also what we are not, because as you may know, our channel often suffers from, I would say, misconceptions from policymakers, and we need to explain that we are a very important contributor to transport, to the transport economy, to local economy in general. So that's going to be one of our priority over the coming month, and we have a number of issues already which we can see will convert in the next month. Digital labeling, of course, will be one of the top priority, as I mentioned. We also hope that in the coming month, the Council will reopen discussions on air passenger rights and the one-bag rule. As you know, we've been working for many years to try and have EU legislation recognizing the right of passengers to bring their airport purchases in addition to their hand baggage and at no extra cost. And now we have the feeling that the Council will reopen the discussions on that issue, and that's something that we are really keen to pursuing, because even if we could see over the last year that the one-bag rule might not be as big an issue as it was some years before, definitely when we started the campaign, we saw from non-EU airline carriers in particular that there is again a go at travellers at the gates, telling them to put their airport purchases in their cabin bag, which sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, and then they have to leave their airport purchases at the gate. And in the airports where it's happening, it's really undermining consumer confidence. It's undermining the sales, and that's something that we need to make sure that we get this correctly. And by having European legislation, then we would give the confidence to passengers that they can bring their airport shopping wherever they are.
A number of fundamental issues that will no doubt elicit some very thought-provoking responses. Julie, thank you very much for your comments today.
Thank you, Luke.
You've been watching Travel Retail Question Time.